Gonna be getting started here, talking some baseball in the next few minutes. Trying out the live stream thing for the first time, hoping it's working. Just started setting this up today. So we'll see if some people jump in here to talk about a really short baseball slate. Just going to take a couple seconds to make sure, do some troubleshooting here. Going to go check in with our DFSR guy, Chris Durrell, to see if we are live and in color. I'm having a little trouble checking it on my own here. But definitely interesting slate of games tonight for what's considered to be a pretty short slate. That is me live. I'm going to try, we have a chat room up on the site you can see. You can see if you click the lower right-hand link, but this is me, Doug Norrie, live for the first time here on DFSR. Trying this out. This was going to be the night to try this out with for sure because there's almost nothing going on for these games right now. Most of the 7 o'clock lineup, or all the 7 o'clock lineups are in, and all the 7 o'clock lineups are in. We're just waiting for that 10 o'clock game, which is the Angels and Minnesota. I don't suspect we're going to get too much difference in lineups for what comes in for that late game. I mean, I know obviously the Angels are without Trout, which is a massive bummer considering the kind of season he was kind of putting up. They really haven't had a clue what to do with their lineup just to begin with, but some people are wondering how to see this. They haven't really had much of a clue what to do with their lineup, really, for the whole season, except for Trout. I mean, he's easy. Anyone could figure out how to use him, but they've kind of jumbled the leadoff spot a bunch. They hit Andrelton Simmons like clean up one day, which makes absolutely no sense. He's probably going to hit leadoff here again tonight against the lefty. I don't know. That doesn't really help them. I mean, you might be able to see someone like Eric Young maybe move up the top of the lineup. He's a switch hitter. I have him hitting 9th right now, but you could see that would cause some difference in lineups, but not too much. Obviously Pujols is going to hit 3rd. Maybe you get a Marte or Maldonado in the middle line. Maybe you see Espinosa even move up a little bit. It could change lineups a little bit. I mean, when I say lineups, it could change some of our optimal lineups if that Angel lineup were to look different than what we have it projected for. So hopefully going to get that in the next, 20 minutes or so. Right now, when you are calculating lineups for us, it's mostly Greinke. Is Greinke coming in 100% of lineups? And I didn't mention this before, but it was mentioned on the podcast earlier today. But I just find the money line on Greinke to just be really weird. He's at minus 120. That started at minus 130. It's come down, and down to minus 120. And I know I can't really even explain it. He's had an excellent season so far. He got blown up last game, but the game before he was excellent. I saw him like 12 Ks. 3 games ago, the Ks were there, but he let up some runs. But his peripherals this year have been fantastic, and I just can't really totally understand the line. It also looked like the line came down with even more money coming in on Arizona, which would suggest, more overall bets coming in on Arizona, and yet the line moving down. So that would suggest some reverse line movement to me. But it's just a weird thing. I mean, I think he ends up being the chalk play anyway, so I'm not going to totally sweat it because I'm not really interested in playing Estrada against this Yankee team in a pitcher's park. Even though Estrada's K numbers have been pretty great, he's kind of come out of nowhere in terms of Ks this season, which is pretty weird for him to make this kind of jump in his mid-30s season, which I don't know. This doesn't usually happen unless you've had some marked shift. We had looked at some pitch FX stuff earlier in the day, and it looked like he had made specifically a change about. I think he had just dropped his curveball. It was either his curveball or his changeup. I'm not going to look it up right this second because Fangraphs has a tendency to. Fangraphs is where I look for pitch FX data. Has a tendency to just sometimes bust my computer wide open. But the site's great, but it takes up a lot of bandwidth sometimes. But he had just Estrada had just totally dropped a pitch from his repertoire, which could be the reason you're seeing more Ks. I'm looking off to the right hand side because I got Danny Valencia up here for the DraftKings early lineups on the TV going off to my side. But yeah, so pairing Estrada and Greinke together on DraftKings is, I think, the move you see. I think that's the move you see most people just kind of do, but there are some cases. I can make a couple cases for some cheaper guys. Yeah, thanks, Nick. Just saw Nick, Chatter Hall of Fame member Nicholas Gani. Johnny? He'll yell at me if I probably pronounce it wrong. Just said thanks. But yeah, no, this is I'm having an easier time talking just to this camera than I thought it would be. But no, I can make some slight cases. So one guy our system really likes tonight is Alex Meyer. So Meyer, he's an interesting case. His strikeout numbers are awesome, right? Like he's basically struck out guys at every single level, and even in the majors, 5 starts this season, he's striking out almost 11 per 9. The problem with him is the walks, man. Holy cow, 7 walks per 9 in 23 innings. I get the 23 innings is a smaller sample size, except you give him 25 innings the season before, and it was 6. And this guy's walking more than 6.5 batters per 9 in 51 innings. I get 51 innings is not much. He also walked a lot of guys in the minors, so he strikes me as having complete control issues. So I think you can consider it on DraftKings even at 6,900. We have, our projection on him is very low in terms of innings. I think we only have him at like 4.75 innings right now, maybe 5, and that's low. If I jump his innings pitched to right even a little bit north of 5, which I mean is basically what he hasn't done it. He hasn't really done it this season, which is the reason I don't want. Or he's not averaging more than 5 innings per start right now. He's gone 4, 6 1/3, 5 1/3, 4, 3 2/3. It's hard for me to take him all the way to like over 5 innings, but if I did, he would basically be in every lineup. And the thing is when you do that, you can then start fitting some pretty significant bats with Greinke. Now, paying $9,600 for Estrada, they did open the roof in the Rogers Center tonight, so that does start to depress some of the power, not a ton. I think I'm right about that. I'll go to our DFSR North here, Chris Durrell. I always get confused about whether or not the power is better with the roof open or not. But yeah. So anyway, but the reason I believe the power reduces because the line did drop a little bit right there. So the Blue Jay run line dropped a little bit, and so actually no, I take that back. It kind of ticked up a little bit. The Yankee run line dropped a little bit. Chris weighs in and says better close. I think that's what I thought. So I think you can live with Estrada there. It is paying. You're paying a premium at 9,600, I think, against an offense that has a top of the order that does concern you a little bit. Like Gardner at the top, they did move Aaron Judge into the third slot now, which probably just makes them better as a team. Like they've been hitting him 5th and 6th this season, which wasn't really making a ton of sense, especially when he was hitting like behind Starlin Castro. That makes absolutely no sense at all to hit a guy like Judge behind Castro. They finally seem to have gotten wise and have moved him up to 3rd in the order. That is a little bit more of a problem. Estrada is pretty platoon neutral for his career, so it's not like he dominates righties in the same way. Like I was thinking Aaron Sanchez for the same team dominates righties and really struggles with lefties. But if you go Gardner, Sanchez, Judge, that top 3 for Estrada is that could be a problem point for him. Now, again, the strikeouts have been there for him, and we did tick those strikeouts up just a little bit recently, just because to try to mirror some of what we saw happening for this season. But that's the thing that has me concerned. But it's not like Alex Meyer is any great shakes in the safety department. Now, if Meyer was something like 5,000 or even 6,000, but then I think it's a totally different discussion. And I think I'm going to run enough DraftKings lineups that, at least in cash, that I'll probably have some exposure to Meyer. Like something like if right now we run the lineups, he comes in lineups 4 and 5. So if I were to run the top, let's say 5 DraftKings lineups, then then we're getting some exposure to him, 40% exposure to him, which I think is fine. Vegas sort of believes in him here. The Angels are favorites, -120, I think, is a live line right now. The run line's the over-under has come down from 9 to 8.5, and it came down more on the Twins side of the ball than it did the Angels. So Vegas might be pulling something out here with Meyer. Maybe they feel like he's going to possibly put it back together. There are strikeouts in this lineup. Dozier will strike out. Grossman will strike out. Sano will strike out a ton. Down to the bottom, Buxton down at the bottom of the lineup is a huge strikeout machine. So there are strikeouts to be had here. I get a little worried that they're playing, from a money line perspective, you're playing without Trout, but Adalberto Mejia is pretty garbagey. So if a team is 4.5 runs with projected, like the Angels have right now with this lineup, then that kind of says all you need to know about your future in the majors, probably for Mejia. So anywho, that's kind of where I stand right now, at least on DraftKings. If I were to upload lineups right now, if I were to export them, which I'm not going to do, I'm going to wait a little bit till this Angels line comes in. But if I were to do it right now, I could see myself having something like 40% exposure, maybe a little bit less, maybe 30% exposure to Meyer in cash games, and mostly just loading up as much on Toronto and Boston as we can get. There are some cheap guys that the system's kind of calling out here tonight they're gonna help you get in the Greinke, playing Greinke. I mean, Greinke's really not difficult to get into on FanDuel at all. That price 10-4 is just kind of no problem territory. You are able to get your hands on at least 2 or 3 Boston bats. The top or middle of the order for the Blue Jays, like Pilar, Donaldson, Bautista, if you want. Bautista right now is the odd man out for our system, mostly because his price has really skyrocketed on both sites. He's in a great spot, so don't get me wrong there, but he might have just gotten back over the price point. So like if you're looking at Bautista right now, you're paying $4,300. It's a great spot to be in against Sabathia, I still think. You could go $200 more to get the Betts. I'd much rather have Betts hitting first against Miley. So if you're looking in that price point, at that upper mid 4,000s price point, then grabbing Betts for $200 and sort of making it work, unless you were stacking Toronto, feels fine to me. But right now our lineup has Tulo, Pilar. This is the top FanDuel lineup. Tulo, Pilar, and Donaldson as the 3 Toronto bats in there, and then it's got a couple Boston guys, and then Gary Sanchez, who system's been pretty bullish on Sanchez. It's not the best matchup in the world, and he's a guy that I wouldn't mind getting away from, just because why sort of bother facing the second best arm on the slate tonight? The problem is catcher is pretty bad, like at least from the confirmed starters so far. So you get, Russell Martin's out of the lineup, which is a bummer. He probably would have been a guy that we could have pivoted to, but Martin's out of the lineup against the righty tonight, or the lefty tonight, which kind of sucks. You get Luke Maile batting 9th. I am not interested in that. You get Mathis batting 8th. Not really interested in that. You could think about Christian Vasquez at 2,500, but he's not necessarily a better points per dollar play than some of these other cheap outfielders. And the reason I mention that is because you want to get points per dollar with the most raw points, and then if you're going to throw in guys like Joe Ricard's in a good spot here, I think, and Chris Young, Chris Young is almost like a must play pretty much for his price point, at least on FanDuel, 2,400, and he's hitting second in the lineup. He'll be an absolute chalk play, but at least on FanDuel. I suspect on both sites he's only 3,500 on DraftKings. So it's not like you need to save on him. You're not going to pivot your spending away from Young, let's say, and on to Betts and then downgrade the catcher position. I don't think that really makes any sense. So this is where you're kind of stuck with I don't know if you're stuck with Sanchez. I'd be wary of playing him with Estrada in the same lineup, but that's what we have on DraftKings right now. Yeah, I think it'd be totally within your totally within your purview. I don't know if that's the right word. Totally within your your right. It's also not a right. We have the filter on our site that says that where you can either choose to have hitters versus pitchers or to disallow it. So right now it's unchecked, so you can just have any hitter, any pitcher. But if you put on the filter where you don't want that Estrada Sanchez matchup, which is actually really the only choice you're making, you're just saying, I don't want to play Estrada and Sanchez together, then the lineups will look fine. Then you're getting guys like Jeff Mathis, and then you're getting a little bit more Alex Meyer, though, because it's saying pay up for Meyer, or excuse me, pay up for Sanchez and kind of ditch Estrada. So anyway, long-winded story to say, catcher's the problem point, and I do think that's why you see a little bit more Gary Sanchez tonight. Maybe, I don't think people are going to play Real Muto against Greinke, and then you get Caleb Joseph batting ninth. I suppose if you saw Martin Maldonado, Maldonado, or I don't think Gratterall, I don't think either of those guys figures to move too far up in the lineup, but I suppose if that Angel lineup came in and you could grab Maldonado, then possibly we're playing him too. But again, where are you going to move away from? You're not going to move away from that savings in the outfield. So I think that's kind of where we are right now. It's Julio in the chat is asking where the love for CeCe is. Not exactly sure how you can love CeCe. I know he had a good game last game, but he is just a guy that has been on not a steady decline for the last couple of years, but he's definitely not improving. So his last 3 seasons, he struck out 7 per 9, 7.3, 7.6, 7.2. Those are pretty bad numbers. Like if this wasn't CeCe Sabathia's name attached to it, I don't see how people really get all that, really can even talk yourself into him. He's an underdog. This Blue Jays lineup is pretty stacked at the top of the lineup with Pilar, Donaldson, Bautista, or even Tulo hitting lower in the lineup now. You're not really getting away from anything. I mean, I don't know what you're hoping to happen if you play Sabathia. So you're just I kind of hope I see people play him. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Just gonna answer Julio here in the chat room. But yeah, you're just not really getting away with anything with Sabathia. I think it's just kind of just the exact wrong guy to pick on this slate. He's actually, if anything, very likely to just actually get blown up more than anything. He's gonna have to run down basically a train of right-handed hitters. So Latin Grinder on chat asked, is Machado's in a major slump? They don't do well versus lefties. Could he still be a decent pivot? So one thing, I could probably get into this for a second. I don't really look at slumps at all. Like I actually have no idea how players have been performing recently, except, I mean, if during a game, if I happen to roster a guy or I'm watching something, or if an announcer says it. Like sometimes I'll pick up on if an announcer says, oh, so-and-so's been slumping. Slumps or streaks, both of them, are things that I do not pay attention at all. And I actually do it on purpose because I think those kind of numbers, those like real short-term sample sizes, are so noisy as to be useless. And actually what they do is I think they're beyond useless. They can be damaging because they can sometimes talk you into making a bad decision because I'll give quotes that I've heard people say over the years. They'll say, I need to see him turn it around before I play him again. Or until he stops mashing, I'm playing that guy every night. And those two kind of thoughts are just not good. I don't really know another way to say it. Because it's been pretty much proven at this point. You cannot predict streaks, whether they're going to start or when they're going to finish. And so short of being able to predict when a streak is going to happen or stop, unless there's some kind of injury or something else, it's really only injury, and it's really only that with the streak, I just don't see why you would ever put any stock into it. So I'm not sure if I answered the question, but I'm happy to play Machado. And typically, honestly, also, the thing with slumps is, slumps usually, with the sites, they usually coincide with a decrease in price. So when you're looking at a guy in a streak, let's say, like again, I have no idea how Machado's been playing recently. Like I crunch numbers all day long, but this is not something. Like again, I'll just reiterate, I don't look at whether a guy's been playing well or not. And when the price is coming down, you're typically just getting your absolute best time to buy. Now, that being said, I'd much rather play Donaldson just straight up. Like Donaldson is just in a better matchup. Eduardo Rodriguez is a better pitcher than Sabathia. I think that Machado is a fine pivot away, especially for tournaments, and especially if you're going to stack some of those Oriole hitters. I believe he is platoon neutral for a righty, but I'm not positive. I know like Adam Jones goes the other way. I'm pretty sure Machado, without looking it up right away, is a platoon neutral kind of guy. So I think he's a fine pivot. I personally am not doing that for cash games because Donaldson is just absolutely running away with just in terms of the raw points, and he's the guy to play. But yeah, definitely he's a guy that I could talk myself into playing. For sure, that's Machado. And like I said, I do like some of that. I like Ricard, kind of the top of the lineup hitting leadoff. The system's always going to kind of call out him when they have him in the top spot, especially on the right side of his platoon, even with Baltimore not looking like they're not projected to put up all that many runs. Let's see how many we have. We got to reload our data set here. So I'm getting an error, but I will do that while we're sitting here quietly. I will reload our data set and I'll get a better number of what we have Baltimore in terms of their implied run line. I'm going to guess it's somewhere like in the 4.2-ish range, but I'll check that as soon as we reload. I wish that it would be funny if that were to tick up a little bit. It's just like the Rodriguez is like just good enough that you can't really go overboard on a team like them because he does have some K stuff in him. He's been pitching better this season. So yes, okay, I got reloaded. We have Baltimore for 4.237455979. So 4.24 runs, let's say, for Baltimore. That's just not a ton for a guy like Machado. Whereas for Toronto, we have Toronto at 4.91 runs. And I think I'm just happy to pay up for a guy like Donaldson. He's not a historic, but he's just one of your classic lefty mashers. Just absolutely rakes that side of his platoon. You are paying a top dollar for him, but I do think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. We have, just for what it's worth too, for at least for DraftKings, we have Machado and Donaldson at exactly the same points per dollar, 2.27 points per dollar. When you have two guys at the same points per dollar and one is significantly more expensive, you want to take that guy. You want to take the more expensive guy. You would rather get the same points per dollar in on the more expensive guy than the cheaper guy. That's just a pretty simple math, I think, but worth noting. And look at the difference on. And we just have Donaldson as just a better points per dollar guy on FanDuel, where their prices are pretty much the same. So I don't know if I was a long-winded response on Machado, but that is my long-winded response on Machado. Going to head over to, we have, hopefully going to be posting this pretty soon on the site. We had a pretty long discussion about some dev plans that we're going to start picking up here in the short term for baseball. But one thing we have is a GPP value for, we have team GPP value. So we're just, I don't even call it GPP, team value chart, where it shows us on a points per dollar scale which team seems to be standing above the rest when you just look down their entire lineup. So this is like a little bit, the reason this is not a perfect number is because when you're stacking, you can see concentrated value on a group of guys, but then you can also see it drop off pretty significantly. Think honestly, think about a team like Toronto tonight, where you're getting pretty great points per dollar at the top of that lineup, but man, it does drop off pretty quickly when you get near the end, because really just replacing Russell Martin in the lineup is going to do that. Like pivoting from Martin down to Maile is that alone kind of throws a monkey wrench into it, but the top of the points per dollar is really concentrated at the top of that lineup. So anyway, long story short, the team that we see as having the most overall raw value top to bottom in this game, or on this slate, is the Red Sox tonight. And that makes sense, right? You're getting pretty great points per dollar value just alone on Young. Betts is in a great spot, hitting the top of the lineup. You get Bogarts in that middle tier. Hanley's system has not seen a night that it does not want to play Hanley Ramirez, especially against the lefty. I know some chatters are sometimes complaining about that. Then you get Sam Travis hitting in the middle of the lineup too. It's almost a shame that he and Hanley are on the same team here because you kind of are forced to choose one of the first basemen, and they're both in great spots. I think right now I'd probably defer to Travis on DraftKings. Oh, no, it's still pulling out Hanley here. So let me just check if it's got Hanley on both. Yeah, it's like Hanley about 81%. I would have no problem pivoting to Travis or possibly even running like something along the lines of maybe I run on FanDuel 60% Hanley and then 40% Travis, which I think is totally fine to do. And then actually if you do that, you might be in a situation where you might upgrade, let's say like second base or somewhere in the outfield, or you upgrade to Bogart. So I could see myself doing that, running something with Travis where I'm not 100% exposed to Hanley, which I think is fine because Travis is an interesting pivot there in the middle of the lineup. But then you get those guys, and then even like some of the cheaper guys like Vasquez and Marrera down at the bottom of the lineup, I wouldn't put them in cash games, but if you're looking at stacks, you can get away with a lot with the Red Sox here. Wade Miley is not a guy we're worried about. The lefties we know struggle in Fenway Park because the ball can just sneak over the fence pretty easily. I believe Wade Miley is a fly ball pitcher, but I'm going to look that up right now. So we're in a spot here with the Red Sox where, in terms of GPP value, they rank first. Then it's a pretty big chasm, something like a 15% drop, and the next team is the Diamondbacks. And then they're kind of grouped in with Baltimore and, I take that back. Arizona does stand somewhat above Baltimore, and then the rest of these teams are a lot lower. So I could see a situation. One thing I'll probably do for GPPs tonight is run, not exclusive, but a fair amount of mostly just Boston and Arizona stacks on both sites. Well, actually, that was just FanDuel. I'll take a look at what the DraftKings number is. So it was Boston as the runaway favorite. Yeah, Boston's pretty much the runaway favorite on DraftKings. Actually, a little closer. You have Baltimore and Toronto coming in much closer on DraftKings than they do on FanDuel, and that's interesting. So I could see a situation for tonight for GPPs, and I haven't uploaded. Again, I'm still kind of waiting for this Angels lineup in. I'm willing to push it, although I just saw an alert come in, so maybe that's their lineup. But I could see on FanDuel running. Oh yeah, so the Angels lineup just came in, and it is pretty much what we thought, but not exact. So it's Simmons, Calhoun, Pujols, which we had. Then I guess they get Escobar back from the DL. He's going to hit fourth. Man, the Angels. Good Lord. Marte, which we had him fourth or fifth already. Maldonado moves up to sixth, and that's actually interesting. We could see here after an update, and we'll just make sure we have the lineup loaded into our data set. Sometimes we need to hit refresh on the lineups to make sure they're there. So I'm going to take 1 second here and just load up the Angels lineup and make sure it's set here and then push the new projections live, because you could see a little bit of a change considering that it's mostly Maldonado moving up this high into the lineup, and I'm wondering if that's going to be enough to kind of push him into some lineups, because if you're getting him pretty cheap and you're getting him pretty cheap at a position that was already pretty weak, like I think it was sort of like overpaying a little bit for Sanchez, then we could see after this next update a situation where he gets moved in there. We got Espinosa, and then I mentioned Eric Young, and then Shane Robinson. Again, this Angels team is really something. It's really a shame what they've done, or I guess what they haven't done, in terms of their team, kind of what they've surrounded Mike Trout with in the short term, or even in the long term, because they've been so hamstrung by this Pujols contract and just like some bad management. Like they got kind of overall completely lucky to have Trout, just sort of this once in a lifetime generational talents, and to just have the rest of the team be these guys, like it's almost just a crime, because it's basically going to be that his prime, his historic prime, he's still so young too, but his historic prime is looking very likely like it's just going to be completely wasted. So I'm going to load this lineup here, see if this makes any changes for lineups. I'll probably end up jumping out of here in about 10 minutes, just so I have time to upload some lineups, make sure I'm getting some of these stackings correct at least. So I think what I'll do, and I'll be in chat for a couple more minutes after that too, just to be clear about what's happening. But I think what I'll probably end up doing is FanDuel. I can see myself on FanDuel basically just running some Boston and Arizona. The system likes these two teams. It's just getting really just great value on both of those squads. And if that's the case, I'm fine just sort of sticking with it. And I actually think Boston might end up being, you might get them a little under-owned, mostly because Toronto's in such a good spot, right? Like I can see more people gravitating toward the top of that Toronto lineup. And I probably will have some of Toronto in there as well because I do think the value's concentrated at the top of that lineup for those guys. But I can see myself a little more on FanDuel, or excuse me, on DraftKings, maybe switching it up. So I reloaded some of our projections with that Angels lineup in here. Yeah, Maldonado did not move up as much as I thought he would. So it's probably not enough to kick Sanchez out of some of these top lineups. So I rerun. Yeah, now Sanchez is pretty much there on FanDuel at least. And then I'll take a look over at DraftKings. DraftKings, where the pricing gets a little bit more, where there's a little wider range of pricing, sometimes the system is a little bit more keen on grabbing one of these cheaper guys. And Maldonado's only 2,800 there, so that is kind of interesting for him. We'll see if he comes in. Someone said, "Is the Minnesota pitcher any good with the Angels being so bad?" Yeah, I wondered this. They are bad. So Maldonado actually is in the top DraftKings lineup. The Mejia is bad, and the Angels are bad. But this is one of those, like, you're kind of in the middle on both of these things, and I would rather just probably avoid it. Let me type in here. So the Angels, I mean, look, the lineup is not very good. We clearly know this. They did throw a bunch of righties in this lineup, so I guess that could give a guy like Mejia problems. But again, Vegas has no real confidence in Mejia. They know that Trout's out. It's not like they aren't. It's not like they're just getting news like, oh, is Mike Trout playing? Oh, no, he's not. Mejia has struck out 8 per 9 this year. He's walking 5 batters per 9. So I guess there's like a little bit of K stuff there, but the xFIP is 5.18. That is absolute garbage. That's over 21 innings. It's actually even worse for his career. I guess he's only got 2 extra innings for his career. But I burped a little bit. So yeah, Mejia is just not a guy I'm interested in. I think for pitching for me, it's all Greinke. It's Estrada some, Meyer some on DraftKings, and he said, "Hey, it's Doug Live." Yeah, that's Doug Live. Gonna give a resounding yeah, even though I just said it and he's watching me. So hey, still getting used to the live thing here about the mechanics of I don't need to type it if people are actually watching it live. So that's my truncated thoughts on Mejia. I kind of talked about Sabathia a little bit ago, but if you're just jumping in, I just kind of said this is not the time that I'm looking to buy Sabathia, not against this lineup in that park. So even with the roof open, and I know that he was good last game, that Angels lineup is a completely different animal than the Blue Jays lineup. I just don't see. Look, any pitcher on any given night can do something. I get it, and Sabathia, at least among cheap guys, is like not a guy that gets pulled early. Like you know, for instance, like we were talking about Meyer. You know, maybe guys on pitch counts or things like that. So if there's any kind of superlative I would give him is that he's old enough to pitch longer if he's doing well. But I'm just not. It's just not someone I'm really. It's not really someone I'm interested in. So to sum up, I'm looking at Greinke. I'm Estrada some on DraftKings. A little bit of Meyer on DraftKings. I think it's worth it. I think the strikeout upside for him is there. He doesn't strike me as super safe, but the bats that you can kind of get in with him after that make a lot of sense for me, especially on DraftKings. You know, you're looking at pretty much a Boston. If you play Greinke and Meyer, at least for our system, you're basically looking at a Boston and Toronto stack, and I'm totally fine with that because I think that works I think that plays for cash games. I also think it really obviously plays for tournaments as well in terms of like that double stacking, in terms of just having 2 teams double stack sort of naturally. And you get a couple of Angels kind of thrown in there, like the system is calling out Maldonado a little bit, calling out Cole Calhoun, mostly because he's super cheap. I know it's a lefty on lefty kind of thing there, but system's not so worried. I mean, we do have platoon splits. Kind of set up in there, and it's not totally spooked by the fact that it's a lefty on lefty. Jamal wants to know if I'm selling on CC. I'm sure not buying. So I don't know what the opposite of selling is, because you can't really sell in DFS. But I'm definitely not buying it. So no real thanks. No thanks to CCI in here. And I honestly, I wouldn't even eat Crow if he was good, because he just isn't. He's just not a very good pitcher at this point in his career. All right, I think I'm going to jump out of here, because I'm going to go. I need about probably 20 to 25 minutes to make sure that I'm set with my lineups. Even on this slow night, we'll be exporting. We've got the new lineup export feature, so it's infinitely easier to get your lineups up onto the site now, just by downloading the CSVs once they pop up. I'll be around in the chat room for the next couple minutes, and then looks like it's just a pretty quiet night, all things in general. Hope you guys enjoyed the live feed. Try to do this every once in a while. I'll even try to do it tomorrow night again if it's not too crazy. It's mostly the crazy nights that's hard to kind of do it all at once. But all right, talk to you guys soon.